Memoirs of a Balancer, Part 1. Choices. She told me that I should write everything down. Most balancers, past and present, have kept a journal of some type. I never saw the logic of doing so, but now I'm starting to understand why. There's only so much that the human mind, psyche, soul, conscious, and body can endure before all the memories and emotions build to an unbearable state. Simply putting them to words can lift an unspeakable burden and lighten your load enough to keep you going. I feel like I'm getting a bit ahead of myself here. I guess it would be best to start from the beginning. My name is Cody. I'm the unluckiest lucky man I know. Simply put, I'm here to tell you my story. A story of a childhood cut short and an adulthood that has been overly fulfilled. It all started with a car wreck. This was no run-of-the-mill fender bender. This was a multi-car pileup at 80 miles per hour on a major freeway. The lucky part? I was one of the few survivors among the 28 left dead. The unlucky part? I survived when I shouldn't have, and in turn was thrust into a world unseen by the average person. I will never forget barreling down the highway, not a care in the world, and my beautiful girlfriend in the passenger seat. Just when I thought nothing could be better, everything went south, and fast. The semi, or lorry for my foreign listeners, jackknifed. There's nothing quite like the sight of a massive truck skipping sideways across 3 lanes of traffic before beginning an uncontrollable tumble. I remember slamming on my brakes, which in my lifted Jeep equated to an uncontrollable slide of my own. That was the last thing I remember before waking up hanging upside down, a steering wheel crushing my chest, with fire and destruction all around me. As most major crash victims can attest, there is a moment after the crash that your mind shuts down. There's no sound. The images you're seeing can't be comprehended. Hell, 30 seconds ago I was driving without a care in the world, watching the road. And now, as I look to my right, I see nothing but destruction past my girlfriend's lifeless eyes. That's what snapped me back to reality. The simple sight of those once beautiful and vibrant eyes, now vacant and staring into my very soul. The screaming, burning, and settling metal sounds began to filter back in with their gut-wrenching smell hot on their heels. I reached for my seatbelt to release myself, and after a few unsuccessful attempts, ripped the belt from its unholy clasp and dropped to the ground. I swear, I felt my organs rearranging as I crawled to the love of my life. Still doubting this new reality, I reached up and felt her face. Nothing but the slack feeling of death greeted my fingers. I began to cry, my wails matching those of the poor souls still trapped in their vehicles. As I lay there, probably dying and wishing that I could do something, I felt a chill come over my body. I knew that there was still something left to be done. I had 2 choices. I could lay here and wait for death to show his ugly, or I could give him the bird and crawl out of this wreckage and do something for the people left to help. I wish I could say the brave side of me decided to be the hero and save those 5 people. What actually happened was I took a back seat in my own mind. I watched from my own eyes as I crawled out of my vehicle, hoisted my broken body up, and began shuffling over to the first car I could reach, where a woman was screaming. It felt like watching a POV movie as I hauled the injured, broken, and infirm from their burning and broken cars and trucks. I'll never forget the look of an old man as he waved me to the car behind him. There was a look of determined resignation in his eyes. The look of a man who knew any attempt to save him would be futile. He died on that road, but he made a choice to be passed over for the greater good of another life. The ultimate choice, in my eyes, that ended with the survival of another. I managed to drag those 5 people to safer grounds before collapsing myself. The doctors would later tell me that the EMTs found me 10 feet from the pile of broken, yet surviving humanity. Apparently I had collapsed there with them before attempting to drag my broken body back into the fray. They said the amount of internal damage should have left me unable to move and that I should have died from the exertion I put upon my body in that state. Lucky for me and the others, I have a high pain tolerance and I'm too stubborn for my own good. I was told that I was the first one airlifted out of the scene at the request of the other survivors. If not for them, I wouldn't be here to tell you my stories. I died in that helicopter. It was only the stubborn attempts of the EMT on board that chopper that kept me alive long enough for the surgeons to fix me. I wish I could tell you an epic story of heaven and hell, crossing over to another plane, or give you some mystical wisdom of death. I can't. All I remember is blackness. That didn't stop something else from coming back with me, though. The weeks spent in the hospital recuperating were some of the worst of my life. The constant pain and agony whenever I moved were enough to drive most people insane. The worst were the blackouts, though. It started with brief flashes, and I'd come to in a different position on my bed. It progressed to minutes, and then I came to in the bathroom of my room. I was staring into the mirror, and the eyes looking back were not my own. Simply put, I felt like I was staring into the galaxy. My eyes were the darkest shade of black, with small specks of gold light like stars or galaxies staring back at me. I screamed before I collapsed and awoke to some very frightened nurses. I spoke to a psychologist in the hospital and he told me that he believed it to be a form of PTSD manifesting itself in blackouts and visual hallucinations. He was so full of shit. I swear he was just calming me down enough to drop the tip to the balancers. Not a day later, I met her for the first time. Sam appeared at my door with a slight knock and a neutral face. The raven-haired woman before me couldn't have been much older than myself. I was 18 at the time and would find out later that she was only 25. But she had the looks of someone very hardened and wise beyond her years. She greeted me with a simple offer, a choice that changed my life. "We've been keeping an eye on you, Cody. We've done our research. We know everything that there is to know about you. You have made an impact on the world. You've helped maintain a balance, and it seems that something chose you. You now have 2 choices. You can squander your gift away in a meaningless life, or you can die here today and be reborn as an instrument that will have the power to help keep a balance that has been carefully culled since the beginning of time." I wish I had said something profound or cool that would have matched her eloquent proposal. Instead, my mouth moved before my mind registered what I was saying. "I have no clue what the fuck you're talking about, but I'm in, Wednesday." The joke was answered as she pulled a pneumatic dart gun from her black suit and she shot me. The bitch shot me. In the fucking chest! As I quickly began to slide into blackness, I saw her thanking someone, then another suit stepped into the room as she said one simple thing that sealed my fate. "He's agreed. Begin the process." That was how my life as a balancer began. With death, destruction, and a fucking tranquilizer dart to the chest. In the time since then, I've learned of a world living beside our own. A world that is kept carefully hidden from the average public. A world where all the stories you hear at night have a grain of truth and things go bump in the night. I've seen the best and worst that humanity and unhumanity has to offer. These are my stories. Things that will only be believed here because we work tirelessly to ensure that the public won't believe them. This is my therapy, the beginning of my memoirs as a balancer. Memoirs of a Balancer. Value. At this point, I feel like y'all deserve a description of what it is I actually do as a balancer. Simply put, I maintain a balance of good and evil that keeps society functioning and the world spinning. I'm laughing even as I record this because it's such a simple and all-encompassing description of a much more intricate and rigorous job. It's especially hard when good and bad are such subjective and situation-based feelings about something. In essence, we are an organization that is unaffiliated, yet tied to all governments, militaries, and religions. We are based out of any country with a high population density, due to such an overlap with the world you see every day and the one you don't. And our extended reach is global. While I'm based out of the US and we tend to work in our own areas, this hasn't stopped me from working across the world. Though we keep our operations mostly in our own domains, this doesn't mean that we are not connected and constantly talking. Information and data is the lifeblood of our organization. Without it, we would be crippled. So we share it freely and keep in regular contact. The organization as a whole is comprised of much more than balancers. There are many other job titles within the organization, and the title of balancer is not handed out easily. There are handlers, people like Sam, who recruit people capable of becoming balancers. They are then stuck with us and are tasked with keeping us informed, in line, and operational. Glorified babysitters. Sam, if you're listening to this, please don't kill me in my sleep. Then, we have the higher-ups. They are the men and women behind the scenes that deal with bureaucratic bullshit and governmental red tape. There are also a myriad of other respectable job titles, from techs to weaponsmiths, information gathering, and analyst specialists. And last, but not least, my favorite people in the organization by far, the archivists. These guys are the ones that file away and organize all of our data, evidence, and spoils that we collect in the field or through other means. These glorious, life-saving, know-it-all bastards have saved my hide more times and in more ways than I care to admit. As for me, my job is the most rigorous. Fuck what the rest of them say. It's my ass on the line 98% of the time. There are only a handful of us in any given branch at any time, and while the amount of us fluctuates constantly, there are never more than 7 of us in any branch at the same time. I don't know why this is, and to this day, I only know of one person who has the answer to that. She's also a crotchety old bat who happens to be the oldest surviving member of our branch. Sorry, I tend to go off on tangents, but fuck it. These are my memoirs, and I'll do as I damn well please. Back to my job. I'm the guy that investigates any incident that hits our radar and is deemed valid. From there, I have to determine if it truly needs our involvement, then rectify the situation and begin cover-up protocols. This all sounds fine and dandy, but my line of work can deal with anything from simple hauntings, to possessions, to creature reports, all the way to homicidal maniacs and serial killers, and the worst that this world has to offer. The one thing I learned quickly is that not every monster is bad. and humans can be much more cruel and evil than anything that the supernatural has to offer. The absolute hardest part of my job is determining the value of any life involved in an incident. This usually takes place in a very short amount of time under some of the most mentally, psychologically, and physically demanding conditions. Most of the time I'm used as a judge, jury, and sometimes executioner. I just determine if a life has the ability to influence the balance of good and evil on this world, and if so, how to deal with it. Don't get me wrong, I'm not some omnipresent being that can judge from the plane of existence higher than ours. I'm a guy stuck with a tough job and limited options and real-time information. With that being said, not all monsters are bad, and not all good people are quite what they seem. I wish I could say that everything I have done is perfect and resulted in a perfectly maintained balance. Hell, I fuck up on a regular basis, and I'm then stuck dealing with the repercussions. I've read quite a few stories on here that end with, or the writers wish it had, the death of an individual or creature. Sometimes a simple snatch, grab, and relocation is much more beneficial to the balance of our fragile world. I guess the best place to start would be my first operation. I'd only been with the organization for a couple of months at this point. I was still acclimating to this new and unknown world. Quick side note. After being drugged and taken from the hospital, I was officially a nobody. I was deleted from any form, database, and anything pertaining to me was either erased or falsified. It's actually pretty easy to do for someone with no close family and very few close friends. The first mission came as a surprise to me, due to the fact that I was still in training and had no field experience past a few unproductive tag-alongs. But everyone has to start somewhere, and my first solo mission was simple. There were reports from a backwoods town in the central US of a cannibal. This wasn't your run-of-the-mill cannibal. There were reports of dead body thefts, human remains found in remote areas with human teeth marks, and a few missing person reports. It was enough to pique the interest of our resident nerds, and thus I was sent in to investigate and handle the situation. The first week there was boring as hell. I spent countless hours posing as a goddamn journalist, looking to turn this into a sensational headline. There were a ton of no comments and turndowns. It looked like this was going nowhere, and none of these folks wanted to answer questions from an outsider. Luckily, I caught the interest of the local coroner. While still being the small-town local yokel type, he wanted something done about the situation, and the local police force was getting nowhere with the case. He told me the locations of more reports that were missed by our keyboard warriors. With this information piped over to the proper sources in the organization, we were able to narrow down a search area. Now came the hard part. Finding this fucker in a goddamn 20-mile radius. That's a lot of space. And only one person on the ground. Thanks to the eye in the sky and some time spent scoring satellite imagery and local info, I managed to find what I was looking for. There was a small hunting cabin that was listed as condemned and unsuitable for use by the local population. There was a lot of speculation at first of what I was dealing with. There was many a night spent on conference calls with Sam and the archivists in a shitty motel. They thought it was a Wendigo or possibly a skinwalker, and sent me the necessary tools to keep myself protected and alive. This included a lot of silver and silver-lined weapons. I almost wish it had been now. What I found was immeasurably worse. At a point during the next week when the organization deemed it was safest and the sun was at its highest and possibly hottest point, I snuck up to that shitty little cabin. If the sight of it didn't scare you away, then the smell would. I was prepared for this, and pulling my vanilla-scented shimag over my mouth and nose, fuck what you think, it's better than smelling Vicks Vapor Rub for the next 3 days. I kicked in the door. All that greeted me was a rapidly decaying and filleted body. I would have gagged if I hadn't started running as I saw something dash out the back into the forest. The fucker was fast! It took all my senses running in overdrive just to keep my feet on the ground and my eyes on its rapidly receding back. I ran, all out, for what felt like minutes. But in actuality was less than 45 seconds before I caught a break. It tripped. It fucking tripped! And went head over heels. They had warned me that any of the possible creatures could blend into their surroundings, jump and run at incredible speeds, or just kill me outright. They never said it would fall over and start crying. It was a kid. A gristle-covered and filthy child begging for his life. That threw me off more than anything. I had expected a horrible creature and a fight and possibly serious injury, but not this. After a few minutes of calming and explaining, I managed to get the kid to believe that I wasn't going to kill him, and I could help him. I took the kid back to my motel and cleaned him up. After a few hours of decompressing and cleaning, the kid told me his story. He was an only child of a poor and despicable family. He had been abandoned in those woods when his family left the cabin after squatting there for some time. This is where I get the chills even to this day. The child wasn't alone after his family left him. He told me of a tall man who fed him what he later found out was human meat. The bodies started to appear at his doorstep, and he was instructed to eat them or die of hunger. The poor kid only lasted a week before he gave in and ate his first, known to him, human. To this day, I have never seen this tall man, and subsequent investigations by people more experienced than me have never found a trail. The best we can figure is that it was some form of Wendigo or skinwalker trying to create another one like them to bring into their fold. From here on out, it's pretty mundane and boring busy work on my part to get the kid in protective custody and beginning the process of planting misinformation. What truly haunts me to this day is how close I was to ending that kid's life. When he was running away, there was nothing but thoughts of rage and death in my mind.
Kill it. Don't let it get away. Don't fail. Don't fuck up. Do it. Shoot. Just fucking kill it.
I later told Sam about this, and that's when my life truly got turned upside down. They weren't my thoughts. More to come for those of you still interested. Right now, there's something I have to deal with. Shit's getting real around here and everything is on high alert. Something big is coming.